Well, I suppose if you look at it with hindsight, quite cynical hindsight, you'd probably say that it was inevitable. But what it means is that all the efforts that the coroner, the judge in this case in place of the coroner, said he was going to make at the very outset, to make this a wide-ranging inquiry that would try to satisfy all the questions that the public and Litvinenko's widow have, that those intentions have basically been frustrated. In abandoning the two particular aspects that remained, this was the possible involvement of the Russian state and whether the British state failed in a duty to protect Litvinenko, which is a sort of code for suggesting that British intelligence knew more than it's letting on. If you rule out those two aspects, what you're left with is really very little. It's just the basics of how Litvinenko died, which really is almost taken for granted by everybody, unless some new evidence on the very narrow issue of how he died emerges.
And that really begs the question of where that leaves things, really, because it's certainly not going to put an end to the speculation surrounding Mr. Litvinenko's death.
No, it won't. There's not a hope of that. It places the coroner in a rather strange position because, as I say, right at the beginning, he did make certain promises about it, and those have been stripped away one by one, partly by the intelligence services demanding the right not to testify, partly by the Foreign Secretary intervening on their behalf to have certain types of evidence, in particular intelligence evidence, taken out of the scope of the inquest, and now we've got the two remaining wider aspects that have been taken out as well. So this is exactly what the Home Secretary Theresa May said when she refused permission for intelligence evidence to be considered more widely back, I think, 3 or 4 months ago. She said, in quite a sort of dictatorial manner, that the judge, the coroner, should limit himself to the narrow scope of an inquest. And it looks as though he has no choice but to do that. But of course, that is, you're right, that's not going to answer the questions. So you have to ask why all this expense and all this trouble has been gone to when we could have had this very simple, basic sort of form of an inquest probably 2-3 years ago, and no expectations would have been raised, and everybody would simply have dismissed it and said, well, we're never going to know. That's where we're back to.
Mary, why, in your view, and just briefly, if you could, why has the British state been so keen to keep information, the information that William Hague wanted, out of the public domain?
I think there are two elements. The element that is widely accepted is that they didn't want intelligence evidence to be heard that might injure relations with the Russian state. I'm not sure that that is the whole truth, even if it's some of the truth. I think they also didn't want to disclose the extent of British intelligence connections with Litvinenko. We know that those existed. We know that he was paid by British intelligence. We don't know any more, and I think the authorities don't want us to know any more.